knock them out, but get to the quarterback, sack the quarterback, actually hit the quarterback. Is this defensive line going to be able to do that?
I think so. And that was one of the 10 things I thought I know about this football team, because they were third in the NFL in sacks last year, and they were sixth in pressures. And that was with only rushing 4 guys for most of the year. Like,
John McMullen will join us about 25 minutes from now. He's heading down to Eagles camp, but JK and I are here to chop it up for you for the next 2 hours. Mr. Kerr, second Eagle practice of the year. Were you wowed? Were you knocked over? Were you ready to declare the Eagles a winning football team or a playoff football team at this point?
Oh, come on, Jody. Jalen Hurts to Devonta Smith, 40-yard touchdown, Super Bowl.
Yeah, you can dream the dream, right? That's what we do here as we work our way through a preseason, at least from what I could gather from all the reporting, and we'll get John McMullen to join us in less than 20 minutes from now. Seems like there was a little bit more emphasis on the defense, although John and everyone else reported that in day one, with all of the red zone stuff that they worked on, the defense seemed to get the better of the offense yesterday because Jonathan Gannon was made available to the media. You got a little bit better feel from the defensive coordinator as to what kind of defense he's going to be run. He's sticking to his hits philosophy there, JK.
Yeah, he is. And, you know, I like what Fletcher Cox said on day one. He's still going to be in 3 technique, but I kind of like how Gannon confirmed it a little bit. Like, yeah, we're going to mix and match them all over the place. And it seemed like they're going to do that with a lot of their players, use multiple fronts. But as long as Fletcher Cox is in 3 technique, he's all good. But I kind of like how Gannon said, hey, we're going to move this guy around. We're going to move that guy around. And, you know, Fletcher Cox is pretty much unstoppable to block, and we're going to use him as much as we see fit, because it seems like Gannon's really putting the emphasis on getting pressure on the quarterback and getting sacks.
And as you pointed out, and I think Coach did yesterday, he's going to do it differently than the previous defensive coordinator who was here. We'll get, as I said, McMullen up here in about 20 minutes. He was a bigger Jim Schwartz fan than I was. Now, I didn't knock Jim Schwartz. I didn't think Jim Schwartz was a bad defensive coordinator. I just didn't think he was one of the best defensive coordinators, which some people in this town kind of put him on that pedestal, which I wasn't sure how that was the case or if he deserved it or not. But Jonathan Gannon is going to be a more flexible coach. The previous defensive coordinator kind of believed in what he believed in, and you can make that work. If you've got the players to play that type of a defense, here we come, we're just going to out-execute you. You may know what we're going to do, but it doesn't matter because we're going to be able to stop you with what we do. Okay, fine. Eagles didn't always do that. So that's why I wasn't as big a fan of Schwartz as other people were. Do you like the new, different, we got a chance to trick you as much as we got a chance to outperform you way that Jonathan Gannon seems to be laying things out?
I thought, and I'll say this with Jim Schwartz, I thought he was a top 10 defensive coordinator in football. I would have ranked him higher before last year, but last year, I don't want to say I saw the light in Jim Schwartz. I just thought the defense was getting stale or it was outdated. And I didn't like how he wasn't changing things up like Jonathan Gannon seems to be doing. And Kayvon Wallace had a really telling quote yesterday. I am more comfortable going into year 2, and the coaching staff is putting me in position to dominate. But I'm paraphrasing here. But I kind of like that. And I think Kayvon Wallace was saying, look, they told me to play here in year 1, and here was it. Year 2, they're having me play to my strengths. And I think that was Jim Schwartz's biggest weakness over the last 5 years. You played his style. That was it. It was my way or the highway. This guy seems to watch film, evaluate these guys, and say, you know what? You guys are going to succeed. I am going to adjust my philosophy for you.
And I've always been a fan of that. Both the head coach and the defensive coordinator kind of made that a point during this offseason that schemes are schemes, and you have your basic tenets and belief. And we know with Gannon, it's the hits philosophy, and that's what he's going to try and emphasize with his team. Rather than put that square peg in that round hole, take what you have, evaluate the talents of your players, and then try and make your scheme and your play calling fit that. I think that's the best way to do it. So Gannon has won me over in at least that mode. here's my one, and again, we're 2 days in to the Eagle defense and Jonathan Gannon stay as defensive coordinator. May it be a decade. Sometimes I think, and this happens in different sports, football just being one of them, people get too crazed about position flexibility that they will actually lean toward when putting together a roster, keep a guy or put a guy on a specific spot on a depth chart because they can play many different positions. That's a nice attribute to have. If you can move around, if you can play different positions, I think it only helps you out in your NFL career. But I wouldn't necessarily lean on that, I've got this jack of all trades piece that I could put everywhere. I like to play my best football players. Get them on the field. If they have flexibility, fine. But if I'm trying to shoehorn a guy in because he can play 3 or 4 different positions, I don't want to over-reward flexibility, if you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, Jerry, and here's the thing. I see this with the Arizona Cardinals. I call them tweeners, and Isaiah Simmons for the Cardinals is a definite tweener. And I thought it was great for them to have him play strictly linebacker, but 5 games in, they were like, you know what? Maybe this guy should be playing where he played in college at safety or cornerback. And then they kind of dropped him back in coverage a bit. And he was all over the place last year, which is all well and good. I love how he could play 5 different positions. But as a football player, he did not have that great of a rookie year for a guy who should have made an instant impact. So that's what I worry about when you got guys like Jacoby Stevens on the roster or, a Jannard Avery. Even Brandon Graham, because he can move inside. I'm like, well, yeah, Brandon Graham's really good inside. Don't get me wrong. But I'd rather see him on the edge, stopping the run and being that guy to get, pressure on the quarterback. When he's on the inside, he doesn't really get to do that much.
Here's one of the things that kind of hit me yesterday was what Gannon had to say and the type of practice they were going through. He truly does believe turnovers help you win football games. And I don't think you have to be a rocket science football coach to figure that. It's pretty self-evident. But how much are you going to dedicate toward it? How much are you going to put as emphasis toward it? More power to him if he can cause them and create them this year. I've said on the air for years, you can't handicap turnovers. You can't game plan them in. You don't know that you're going to get 3 turnovers in the course of a football game before the football game even starts. But I like his attitude that he thinks he can increase the number of turnovers. Well, the Eagles were one of the least turnover teams in football last year, so you better be able to increase it. Do you believe that you can, just with your desire, with your attention to it, that you can actually increase a number of turnovers your team's going to get over the course of a season?
Well, I'll go back in time a little bit. I thought the 2007 Eagles actually had a really good defense under Jim Johnson, but they didn't get turnovers. And they had guys like Takeo Spikes on that team. Brian Dawkins was still really good. He was a turnover machine. And Leo Shepard and Sheldon Brown were on that team. But these are guys that with turnover history, forcing fumbles and getting interceptions and all that, they barely got squat, and it ended up hurting the performance. And then the next year, all of a sudden, Jim Johnson goes, hey, man, we're going to focus on, causing turnovers, helping this offense out. I think the Eagles were like 3rd or 4th in the league in turnovers that year, or plus minus. So, yeah, if you focus on that, I think it does correlate in the regular season. But like you said, Joe, it's hard to predict. You're not going to say, hey, we got to get 3 turnovers a game. No, I think what you got to do is make sure you're in the plus when it comes to turn. I always think +5 is a really good number for the year. For the takeaway giveaway. I think +5 is always a good number, and I think that's a number the Eagles can strive for.
And in yesterday's practice, you saw a lot of drills whereby the Eagles, be it their linebackers and or their defensive backfield, not so much on the defensive line, but everybody in the back 7 were taking turns punching at the football. Now, that is very effective. I think that's smart. I think every time you tackle a guy, once you've gotten a position where you're 90% sure that you're going to be able to bring a guy down, you take a swipe at the football. Why wouldn't you? At least get your hand in there and see if he's carrying it lightly. Most times you're not going to move it, but at least take the shot. I like that aspect of his defense. But here's the tricky part about that. As I mentioned, you got to be 90% sure you're making the tackle. Well, that 10% can be a bad 10%. If you think you've got him, all of a sudden he wriggles out. Now he's turning upfield for another 10 or 15 yards. You have to be pretty damn sure that you've already knocked him off his feet. He's heading toward the ground when you make that play on the ball. It's an acquired skill, and it looks like they're working on that skill during these first couple of days of practice.
Yeah, Jerry. And look, I played till 12th grade, and I played defensive line. And one thing I was always
taught was defensive line.
Yeah.
What are you tipping the scales at now?
I'm at 130 now. I was about 170 in high school, so it's still small. But
170-pound defensive lineman. You must have been a madman.
I was quick. Yeah, I was one of those guys, spark plug off the edge. But pretty much when we would bring someone down, we did like a little uppercut and to just get rid of the football, just pop it loose and have someone else recover it. And I would like to see the Eagles kind of do that. And I know that's a basic trick because a lot of NFL players have told me that, hey, yeah, we still do that even at this level. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And I used to ask, college coaches back in my senior year in high school, why do you do this? And, why do we uppercut? And they're like, honestly, because people do not grasp the football the way they should. They're weak carrying it because they're trying to get every yard that they can. So when you uppercut it, it just loosens it a little bit and maybe that causes a fumble. So I'm like, well, okay, that makes sense. So if the Eagles can do something like that when they're bringing players down, that could theoretically cause 3 or 4 fumbles a year. And I honestly think that happened to Miles Sanders last year. He got a little lazy carrying the football early in the season because Miles Sanders does not fumble the football much. And he did twice in the game last year. It was just really frustrating to watch that. And he even admitted yesterday, look, I just got to grasp the football tire, and that's what we're working on in training camp. And I'm glad he's doing that. And I think the defense, they're going to test him and take shots at that.
Fumbling is one way to get your hands on it. The other way is via interception. Eagles just upgraded by getting Steve. I did read somewhere that he prefers Steve over Steven. We've been calling him Steven for months leading up to the Eagles actually acquiring his talents and skills, Mr. Nelson. But Steve is a guy who's never really been an INT guy. As good as Darius Slay is, he's not really a top flight INT guy. He's gotten his fair share here and there, but not a mega season. Does that concern you at all? That maybe the coach is going to put an emphasis on interceptions, and that's I think an innate skill that either you have it or you don't. If you go for it, you don't get it. You know what that equates to: big play downfield. Receiver gets behind the DB. Again, I like the philosophy, but I'm not sure this Eagle defense, this grouping, their secondary is necessarily fit to be overly aggressive in trying for picks.
Yeah, I think the one who can be aggressive, at least in my opinion, is Darius Slay because he's going to have a decent outside cornerback next to him in Steven Nelson. But Nelson even said that if the Eagles, theoretically would ask him to go play in the slot, he would go do it. I don't know why they would do that because you brought Steven Nelson to be a boundary corner. But Darius Slay's the one. I feel like he's had 8 interceptions in a season before. He's had 20 pass breakups in a season before. He knows how to find the football. And if teams actually test him, especially against really good receivers, if Slay gets beat a little bit, I think that's when you try to go for those picks and say, you know what, I got beat by half step here. Maybe I go for the football, and if I give up a big play, so be it. I'm probably going to give up a big play anyway. That's where I think Jonathan Gannon is reaching there and telling these guys, hey, look, if something does happen to you, don't be afraid to get a little more aggressive here and try to cause something.
Now, I've been doing shows here in town for over 30 years. My first year was Buddy Ryan's last year, as a matter of fact. And still to this day, it boggles my mind as to how popular a guy Buddy Ryan was, considering he and I won the same number of playoff games as a coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, which would be 0. But people just loved Buddy Ryan as a coach because, A, he was a trash talker, and B, he emphasized defense. This town has always loved defense. I would say that 90% of the National Football League, if you ask their fan bases in the towns in which the NFL is in, which is more important, which do you enjoy more, which do you get more excited about, offense or defense? 95% are going to say offense. Philadelphia is one of those rare entities that I think actually appreciates defense just as much as they do offense. And a lot of that starts with the ability to get to the quarterback. The league is different than it was in 1990, and there are more rules in there to protect the quarterback, but the old kill the quarterback mentality still rings true with Eagle fans. Are they going to be able to do that this year with this team? And I'm not talking about lay them out and knock them out, but get to the quarterback, sack the quarterback, actually hit the quarterback. Is this defensive line going to be able to do that?
I think so. And that was one of the 10 things I thought I know about this football team, because they were third in the NFL in sacks last year, and they were sixth in pressures. And that was with only rushing 4 guys for most of the year. Like, Jim Schwartz very rarely rushed 5. I think he did toward the end of the year when they were getting a little more desperate and they were just trying things out because the season was over. But this team, I feel like with the personnel they have, and adding Ryan Kerrigan is huge for this. You're going to have a guy like Josh Sweat going after the quarterback, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox we know what he can do. Javon Hargrave came on the second half of last year. I feel they are going to get to the quarterback, and I feel you're going to see multiple fronts. My issue is, who's going to be, if you had rush 5, rush 6, who's going to be that blitzing safety, that blitzing corner, that blitzing linebacker? Do we know who that's going to be on this team yet? No, absolutely not. That's going to be my concern, and that may hamper a little bit what they're going to do. But in terms of actually getting to the quarterback and kind of forcing him to get rid of the ball sooner than he would like, yes, I think they're going to do that.
And here's good news for the Eagle fans if they are looking forward to sending extra guys at the quarterback, which you just said you think they are going to. Oh, as do I. I think they're going to do a lot more of it than they did under Schwartz. We look back at last year's team and the roster that was in place and the carryover guys. If the coach doesn't give you the green light, you can't do it. So that doesn't mean, well, look at they got no sacks. They've never been pressured. Well, because they're dropping in coverage. We don't know what the new coaching staff is going to ask of these guys. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that any of their complementary of linebackers and or D-backs and or safeties can actually be good at it. I'll believe they can until they prove to me that they can't, rather than the other way around. And I will not hold non-blitzing Jim Schwartz former defense against these current players. All right, he's Jeff Kerr. I'm Jody McDonald. We're your Birds 365 guys. The usual co-host of the show is going to join us next. He's headed down to Birds practice again today, but before he does, he's going to join us. John McMullen is next here on Birds 365.